Thank you for tuning in for today's Black History newscast. Today we are talking about John Coltrane and the events of the Freedom Rides. John Coltrane is known as an American jazz saxophonist. He was born in 1926 in Hamlet, North Carolina, where his father was a tailor and part-time musician. In Coltrane's childhood, he began to learn to play the clarinet and alto saxophone. He then went on to Philadelphia for schooling in Ornstein School of Music and Granoff Studios. In 1945, Coltrane got drafted into the Navy and played with the Navy's band until 1946. A year later, he switched to the tenor saxophone and began to play in nightclubs and recordings until joining Miles Davis's quartet in 1955. Coltrane was beginning to become rather popular. During this time of his life, he was addicted to drugs and alcohol that started to change his appearance and musical ability, thus got him fired. After being fired, he immediately stopped his addiction and made his own recordings under his own name. Coltrane had been practicing so much that it led to his signature style. They called it sheets of sound. He was able to make his individual notes have the effect of sounding like a chord on a piano. In 1958, Coltrane rejoined Davis's group, but then 2 years later formed his own that included bassist Jimmy Garrison, saxophonist Pharoah Sanders, drummer Rashid Ali, and his wife, pianist Alice Coltrane. Coltrane continued to climb in success. During the last year of his life, close ones knew something was wrong. Coltrane was suffering from liver cancer but continued to perform and record till the day he died on July 17, 1967. Coltrane had a massive impact on music then and now. He is one of the greatest musicians of all time. Coltrane had made music for the sole reason of making people happy. Coltrane had once said, "I know there are bad forces, forces that bring suffering to others and misery to the world. I want to be the opposite force. I want to be the force which is truly for good." Many works and techniques today are all inspired by him. And now, the events of the Freedom Rides. CORE, Congress of Racial Equality, led the first Freedom Rides in 1947. They were inspired by two Supreme Court rulings in 1946 and 1960 that said segregation in interstate commerce is unconstitutional. The original Freedom Ride was led by George Hauser in Bayard Rustin, and it included only men. In 1961, the Freedom Ride idea was brought back, and it included men, women, and mixed interracial groups. The purpose of the rides was to ensure that the states were abiding by the Supreme Court's rulings, so they took a trip down south. The riders were met with lots of violence, and mobs of whites would wait for them to arrive and beat them. In Anniston, Alabama, the buses that the Freedom Riders were on were bombed. After that incident, CORE abandoned the rides. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee decided to continue the Freedom Rides. TV was showing the brutality of the Southerners towards the Freedom Riders, and the public opinion on segregation was changing. Robert F. Kennedy worked with Governor John Patterson of Alabama and bus companies to secure a driver for the Freedom Rides and a state of protection. Police escorted the bus, but they left as soon as the Greyhound bus made it to Montgomery, and a white mob with bats and clubs attacked the Freedom Riders. Attorney General Kennedy had sent 600 federal marshals who used tear gas to get rid of the mob. On May 24, 1961, the Freedom Riders left Montgomery to head for Jackson, Mississippi, where hundreds of supporters were there to greet them. Though, if they tried to use white-only facilities, they were arrested and put in maximum security. Kennedy made a statement encouraging a cool-off period because a lot of violence was growing. In Mississippi hearings, the judge wouldn't even listen to the Freedom Riders' defense. They were sentenced 30 years. Rides continued, and many people were joining in on them, making rides gain attention nationally and internationally. In 1961, the Interstate Commerce Commission finally provided regulations prohibiting segregation in interstate transit. Not only did the Freedom Riders desegregate travel, they played a big part in bringing national and international attention to the civil rights movement. One of the most important things that came out of the Freedom Riders were the people who participated. Many of the people who were once on those buses later became major names from the movement. Thank you for tuning in for today's Black History newscast, and have a great day.